Hey, it's Vicky, and today I'm here to talk about the books that I read in August. August was an interesting month. Had kind of a broad range of genres read, of ratings given. I had my first DNF of the year, so that was fun. So I read 5 books total. My average rating was a 3.55. Like I said, I was kind of across the board with my ratings. I read 2 print books, 2 audiobooks, and 1 ebook. And yeah, let's get into it. So I don't know if you guys remember in my June-July wrap-up that I did, I talked about how I was currently reading a book that I really didn't want to DNF and was hoping I wouldn't, but I did. I did DNF it. I DNF'd The Toll by Neal Shusterman. This was a big disappointment for me because this is the 3rd book in the Arc of His Side series, and so I really wanted to finish it and see how everything was gonna pan out. And I made it 395 pages and I just couldn't do it anymore. It was not interesting. I think part of it too was I waited way too long between the 2nd and 3rd book. We're talking almost 3 years, and I remembered nothing about the 2nd book other than how it ended. So I went into this and I feel like I was spending so much of it trying to figure out what was happening and who people were and everything. And then it felt like it wasn't going anywhere. And so I DNF'd it. So I'm bummed because again, I would have been completing a trilogy, and I gave up on it with like 200 pages left to go. So yeah, that happened. Then I read a poetry collection that I did not really enjoy. I read Lives of the Animals by Robert Wrigley, and I read this because this was Austin's grandma's book. She was a big fan of poetry, and when she passed away, it was on her shelves, and I thought I would give it a try. She was a huge animal lover, and so I thought, of course, she would have a poetry collection about animals. But this one, I just didn't like it. I felt like a lot of the poems, for being about animals, and you would think it would be about this, the poet would be interested in animals or like animals. I didn't get that feeling from him at all. I felt like he didn't like them, and there were a couple poems that were just, in my opinion, kind of cruel to animals. So yeah, I didn't really like this. And I understand that in the animal world there is violence and cruelty and things can be very unfair, but I just wasn't expecting it from this collection, and so I gave this 2.5 stars. Didn't really like it. I'm gonna hold on to it because it was grandma's, and she like starred the poems she liked, and she even had like some handwritten notes in there, so I'm gonna keep it for that reason only. I wouldn't recommend it. Then I read a romance book. What? I know, I don't read a lot of romance, but I like this author. This will be my 3rd book by this author. I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and I listened to this on audio. The narrator was Brittany Presley. And this one, I like Ashley Poston's books because though they are romance, they always have some kind of like supernatural or speculative sort of vibe to them. So this one, it's about our main character Clementine, who shortly after her aunt passes away, who she was really close with, she inherits basically her aunt's apartment in New York City, and she quickly discovers that this is a special apartment because there are times where when she comes through the door, she is 7 years in the past. And one day she comes into the apartment and it's 7 years in the past and there's a man there. And so you can guess what happens with the man. And so it was interesting because it kind of played with time, because he's 7 years in the past, she's obviously in present day. That kind of gets interesting with the different sort of timelines that are going on. And I liked how it touched on that, how certain people can be great for you in a certain time in your life, certain events happening at a particular time in your life, and that sort of thing, just about time and timing. I liked it. And the romance was fine too. There were parts of it that, I don't know, were a little bit cheesy. There was a whole element that has to do with like cooking and stuff, because the guy in the past is a chef. And I don't care about cooking. I'm not a foodie. I don't really like it in my books. So I didn't really care about that, but I thought it was a cute story. I liked this one more than A Novel Love Story, but the first book of hers I read, I think it's called The Dead Romantics. That's my favorite still. But this one was good. I gave it, what did I give it? 3.5 stars. Next, I read a book on my Kindle. I read a book called Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau, and I read this one because it was sort of pitched as a Daisy Jones meets Almost Famous, and Almost Famous is one of my favorite movies, and so it's about a teenage girl named Mary Jane who starts nannying like as a summer job for this family where the dad is a therapist and he does therapy out of his home, and then she's taking care of so he's married, has a wife, and then she's taking care of their 5-year-old daughter Izzy. And this particular summer, he has a client come to stay with him who is a celebrity. He is a rock star and he's married to a celebrity also. So they're both celebrities. I would say that the female celebrity, to me, she gave off sort of like Cher vibes, because she had just like, she was known by like one name. She had a like sort of variety show on television. She was a singer and actress and had this variety show, and the story takes place in the 1970s. I don't know if I mentioned that. So, and then, like I said, the guy is a rock star. He's a lead singer in a band. And so Mary Jane, they kind of have this the family she narrates for, or nannies for, they're very unconventional, especially for the time period. And Mary Jane comes from a family that is very prim and proper. Her mom is your typical housewife. And so she kind of comes in, and even though she's only 15 years old, she really brings stability to this family. But also, because this rock star and his wife are there, they kind of also teach her to kind of loosen up a little bit. And she kind of finds herself and whatnot. And it was a sweet book. I think even though it touched on some somewhat dark topics at times, it talks about like addiction, because that is the rock star's main issue, is he's trying to get clean. And so you have like addiction, and then like there's marriage issues between the rock star and his wife, and also the therapist and his wife. And so it kind of touches on that. There's times where you feel like Izzy, the little girl, has definitely been neglected by her parents. Despite her dad being a therapist, he sometimes isn't the greatest parent. And so there's like, even though it kind of has some dark, sad parts, for the most part, I felt like it was very sweet and wholesome and kind of uplifting. And it's just a really fun kind of coming of age summer book to read. So if you like coming of age, you like 70s, you like Almost Famous, give it a try. It was good. I gave it 3.75 stars. Then I read a nonfiction book called What Doesn't Kill You: A Life with Chronic Illness, Lessons from a Body in Revolt by Tessa Miller. This is a memoir about Tessa Miller and her story about being diagnosed with Crohn's disease in her early 20s, I believe. And just what it's like to live with a chronic illness and being in that sort of limbo of, you're not terminal, the disease won't kill you if you take the treatment. However, it does still have a huge impact on your life. And so I thought this was really eye-opening, because honestly, I didn't know a lot about Crohn's disease and what it kind of did to your body. And so that was very like informative and eye-opening. She talks a lot about just what it's like to have a disease like this, and ways that people who are not chronically ill can be allies to people that do. She also talked a lot about her family, and I thought that was also very interesting. And all in all, this was it was a good audiobook. I listened to it on audio, I don't know if I mentioned that, and Tessa Miller narrated it, so yeah, it was good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And then lastly, I read a short little novella called The Most by Jessica Anthony, and I picked this up because oh my gosh, I can't remember his name at the moment. He's a booktuber who hasn't really posted much in the past couple of years, but he popped on a couple months ago and did a book review of this because he loved it so much. Oh my God, what is his name? Rick McDonald? God, I can't remember his name. I'll put it down here. And watched that video, and I thought, okay, I need to go pick this up. And the next time I was in the bookstore, there it was on the paperback table, and I had to pick it up, so I did. And I wanted to read it in the summertime, because it takes place, the kind of plot of the novella is our main character, whose name is Kathy. It takes place in the 1950s in the sort of on the East Coast. And one day in late fall, but it's an unseasonably warm day, she lives in an apartment complex. She's a wife, mother of two. She decides to get into the apartment complex swimming pool to go for a swim, and then basically doesn't get out for the entire day. And her family is kind of like, what is going on? Why are you in the pool and why won't you get out? And she's kind of reflecting on her life and the choices that she's made. And you also sort of get perspectives from her husband, Virgil. And it sort of gave off vibes of kind of Revolutionary Road, in that you have this married couple who are in the 1950s America, and they're living the American dream. You know, he has a good job selling insurance. She's a housewife. They have two little boys who are who are happy and healthy. And you think that, wow, they just have the perfect life, but really they are unfulfilled in many ways. Mainly, like, Kathy was a tennis player and kind of gave up that dream to become a wife and mother. Virgil, yeah, he has a good job, but he doesn't really like it that much, and he's made some mistakes. They both have made some mistakes in their marriage, and so it just sort of shows that sort of dark underbelly of 1950s America. Even though, you know, on the outside people looked so happy, it maybe wasn't necessarily that way. So I really enjoyed this. I thought the writing was good. I liked the themes. I liked it more than Revolutionary Road, I think. Maybe because it was shorter, I don't know. But yeah, this was good. I gave it, what did I give this? I gave it 4 stars. All right, guys, so those are the books that I read in August. It was a pretty good month. Like I said, my ratings were kind of everywhere. And yeah, I had that DNF, which really bummed me out because I spent so much time this month reading The Toll when I could have been reading other things that I enjoyed. So I'm glad that I eventually DNF'd it, but I probably should have let it go sooner. But anyway, you live and you learn, right? So let me know down below what you read in August. What was your favorite book? I would love to know. And yeah, that's it. I hope you guys are having a great week, and I will talk with you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.